What's up, folks? Welcome back to the channel. Boozer here. Thanks for stopping by. Today's video, we are on the test server here, and again, we will be talking about stage 30 of the event dungeon. This time, we're going to be using a super fast team featuring Sun Wukong, who, as we all know, is a free promo champion for brand new players. Now, time and time again, Sun Wukong has shown that he has insane potential. He's great in the early game, mid game, all the way into the end game. I still use my Sun Wukong pretty much all the time in live arena. Great champion overall. Really helpful, especially for early players as well with the speed in arena battle. He can be used as a damage dealer or as a debuffer, both of which doesn't require books, but obviously having some extra damage on his big single target nuke here on his A2 is really helpful. But as a debuffer, he doesn't need additional books for increased chance of landing block buffs or the strip or anything like that. His bread and butter is going to be his passive here. It makes him a reoccurring menace. Very strong champion. Even the A1 is very strong with this super annoying stun ability. But enough talking about this champion. What team are we going to use him in, and how fast are we talking about, and how can I build this team? Now, this is the team that I have been using and testing on the test server here. This is a team that I can build with my own account, and obviously will not be completely accessible to everybody because we are talking about 4 legendaries here. 2 of them were old fusions, but 2 of them are not. So this is not the most accessible team, even though Sun Wukong is a free champion. But if we're talking about this power level of a team, these champions are much more easily accessible than void legos or mythical champions. So at least for me, it is very accessible. I'm going to show you guys exactly what happens or how this run shakes out, but let's quickly do a run here and I'll show you guys exactly what this team can do. So full auto, of course. There we go. We got 8-second run. My best time was 6 seconds here. You see exactly what happens. Sun Wukong nukes the Mortu and the splash damage kills the boss. Keep in mind, guys, this is stage 30, the hardest level for the event dungeon. And we got a piece of gear here. Not too bad, but looking for speed, of course. If you blink, you probably would have missed it. Let's do it again. So we have Yost right here with the turn meter boost, speed up, attack up, speed down. And then we have the buffers with Bad L, Gerp Tuck. Herndig comes in, softens up the Mortu, and then sets up the Wukong with the giant single target nuke, and the splash kills everybody. Nice banner. Nice banner. So let's watch that again. Let's just keep watching it. Keep watching it here. So again, buff, debuff, and then more buffs, debuffs. Got the single target nuke, sets up the Wukong. Now, I'll show you guys exactly what can go wrong with this team. It's not a 100% team. As much as I've tried to set it up so that it's 100%, I cannot get it to be 100%. So I'll show you guys exactly what can go wrong here. I'll turn off auto. So what happens is that Yostrid goes for the buff here. So plus attack and plus speed. Not a lot of champions have this level of turn meter boosting, because she boosts our own turn meter, and also gives us increased speed, which greatly reduces the speed requirement on our damage dealers, which means they do more damage. But she also puts decreased speed and pushes back turn meter on the enemy. So she's doing it both ways, right? So what can happen here? This is what could happen. She could trigger Mortu's turn meter boost with his passive. So that's 20% chance of happening. And although she's doing the increased turn meter, decreased turn meter, increased speed, decreased speed, we can run our champions theoretically, slower. But because of the chance that Mortu gets the turn meter boost, and then followed by the Herndig attacking Mortu, potentially pushing up the turn meter, it could allow him to gain enough turn meter to basically cut in. Obviously, this is layers upon layers of RNG, because his turn meter would have to basically trigger multiple times. But hey, that needs to be said. After that, we have Bad L. So Bad L here is going to remove debuffs from all allies. That's not super important. He's going to put 2 continuous heals, which is important because that's going to basically boost up our damage. And then place 2 poisons on everybody. So the thing about Bad L is that his passive All allies inflict 20% more damage against targets under poison. So there is a world where he misses the poisons. There is a world where he misses poisons, but we do have Gurptuk to kind of cover that kind of world a little bit. So, but it is possible, right? It is possible if over large amounts of energy, large amounts of sample size, it is possible. And then we have Gurptuk here, who is giving the block buffs. Block buffs not super important here. It is important if your nukers are a little bit on the slow side. So the block buffs, you place them on the enemy, and then Wither, if Wither, you know, is faster than your nukers, for example, she'll come in, she'll try to place increased defense, and then since you have block buffs up, it'll block the increased defense, which could be, you know, the difference between succeeding or not succeeding to run. So Gurptuk here is going to apply the block buffs plus poisons. The poisons on ourselves boost up our damage. And then Herndig, what he's going to do is that his A3 is set up to open. So he will target the positive affinity champion, which is Mortu. And Mortu is actually the softest one out of all of these, which is the one we want to hit. The good thing about this is that Herndig has a weaken on this ability. So if he lands, for example, if Eostrit does not land the weaken because of her affinity on Mortu, and that allows Herndig to land the weaken. If both of them do not land the weaken, let's say both of them do not land the weaken, and Volcanos has the weaken on him, it doesn't matter if Mortu has low HP or not, but Wukong will fire his A2 into Volcanos. So there are layers and layers of RNG that can cause fails. Some are more likely to happen, especially if you don't have enough accuracy to make all the debuffs happen at 97%, which is basically like the cap. But if a couple 3% happen in a row, then you're going to get a fail. Now, another thing that could happen here is that Herndig, his A3 is effectively a double hit. So a double hit on Mortu here, again, could double trigger his passive, pushing his turn meter high enough so that, you know, he might get a turn, cut in, and then kill your Sun Wukong before he can fire off. Now, the good thing about Herndig is that he actually can deplete the turn meter, but a 3% chance that it will fail. So there are chances, you know, layers upon layers of 3% that can happen that can cause this to fail. So let's see what happens here with his A3. Look how low Mortu is. This is the perfect setup, right? I've tested this with many different combinations and I've gotten the damage just right. So if weaken is applied before Herndig attacks, he basically caps out his damage at this point where Mortu is almost dead, but not quite. And if for some reason, obviously affinity issues or resist, Estrid can't land the weaken on the Mortu, Herndig can still soften him up and still apply weaken for Wukong to finish the job. So Wukong's going to fire his A2 into the lowest HP champion with equal debuffs as the rest, and then finish off the fight. So that's kind of how it works. But like I said, there's a lot of layers of RNG that could potentially happen. Now I'll show you guys the run again. We can do it again manually. So she's going to buff and then debuff. This time everything is perfect. Mortu, no weak hits or anything like that. Bad L's going to come in here. Poisons, no resists. Gurptuk's going to come in, no resists. Everything is perfect. Herndig's going to come in with the A2. The A3. And look how soft Mortu is. And Wukong's going to come in with the A2 cannon and then end the fight. Again, that's a good scenario, right? That's a good scenario, but it doesn't always work out that way. I did a lot of testing on this just to see how consistent it can be. And this is the most consistent setup I have currently. I'll show you guys exactly what I'm talking about. So let's see, I did a set of 20 here. This 20, I did 17 wins out of 20. So 85% win rate. And then I did another 20 clip here, 19 out of 20. So that's 95% win rate. And then I did 100 runs here and 88% win rate. So, you know, it's not amazing. And I'm actually kind of surprised that the win rate is actually this low. I was really hoping for 90 something, low 90s, maybe 95, hopeful. But this is the best it could be. If you guys are really looking to maybe gun down like a tournament or something, or just need some really fast CBC points or something like that, this type of team is the team you're looking for, especially if you don't have somebody like Siegfried, which is the other one-shot champion. Then Wukong's going to be the more accessible option for you guys. Now, let's go over the team here. I'll go over the champions used. So we have Eostria here in 9-piece protection set. She doesn't need to be 9-piece protection. She can be in 9-piece feral set, right? Because a 9-piece protection set is going to give her 10% damage to the team. Same thing with the feral set. If you have her with Brimstone, for example, she could theoretically drop one more debuff, so feral would be theoretically better, but it's very marginal stuff. I put Cruelty, although it's not super necessary. Cruelty could help somebody like Herndig, do a little bit more ignore defense, for example. Masteries here, I have her with Helm Smasher, just for additional damage. You could use War Master as well. Not particularly important. Relic, just for some additional damage to soften up the boss and more too. The other thing that's really important here is that you're looking for at least 500 accuracy. So the boss has the boss requires about 525 to land, I believe, 97%. So you're looking for, somewhere as close to 525 as possible to land your debuffs. More too, I believe, is 505 or 510. So definitely aim for that level of accuracy. After that, we have Sun Wukong, which is, one of the most important, hardest to gear champions on your team here. And he needs to do damage, right? He needs to do damage. So the best thing you can do is look for 100% ignore defense on his whole kit. So the best way to do that is obviously to stack up, ignore defense set, which is going to be Merciless, 35% there. Keep in mind that his A2 is 50% ignore defense. So now we're looking at 35 plus 50, so that's 85. We're missing 15% ignore defense. Now, if you have a 6-star Crushing Ren Blessing, then you basically can make up for that missing 15% pretty easily. So you ignore 1% defense for every 10 levels. And the boss here is 350 levels. So every 10 levels, so you're getting 35% ignore defense. So if you have Crushing Ren, you're all good on the 6-star. But if you don't, then you have to find the remaining 15% ignore defense. And the easiest way is Cat's Gaze. So if you've been playing since Alice, earlier this year, you might have gotten your hands on a Cat's Gaze. So this one that I have is giving me 16% ignore defense, which is just enough for me to get 100% ignore defense, which means you don't need defense down. However, Weaken still can boost your damage. So Weaken is very, very important. I have him in the 6-piece Merciless bonus, as well as a Zeal set, which gives crit damage and 3% damage for every 25% HP this champion has. Unfortunately, he does take some damage from the HP burns and all that. So he's not getting the full benefit from this, but Zeal at this point is better than like Cruel set, for example, because I'm already capped out on the ignore defense. Total stats on the Sun Wukong: 441 crit damage, 75% crit rate. I am running Bad L for his crit rate aura, so that kind of contributes to the remaining crit rate. No accuracy needed for him, 8.6k attack. He is decked out, ready to go. Now, the total stats here, you can definitely get away with probably less. Maybe 400 crit damage you can probably get away with. But it really depends on the rest of your setup, how much team buffs you have, and all that. So Heaven Cast for me actually works pretty well. Like, for example, if I didn't use Heaven Cast, there isn't really too much other ones I would use. Like, if I wasn't at 100% ignore defense, like you could use, I guess, Crushing Rend, even without the 6-star, but here, Heaven Cast works fine. You're going to get a couple buffs. You're going to get 2 from Estria. You're going to get 2 from Bad L. So that's going to be an additional, 4 buffs. Additional 4%. 4% damage is not much, but it's the difference between winning and losing. Flawless Execution here for additional 20%. You don't want to take Helm Smasher because you're at 100% capped. Stoked to Fury is pretty good, obviously with Gerptuck. Everything else is pretty self-explanatory. First hit damage bonus, pretty good. This one's not going to be any useful. And then, of course, Stoked to Fury, like I said. So that's going to be Sun Wukong. All right, guys, so this is my Herndig. So again, you have to gear him out for some damage. Not too much damage, not as much as Sun Wukong. But yeah, he has to bring Mortu down quite a bit just so, Wukong can finish off the Mortu. So after taking a look at my Herndeg's build after all those runs, I actually realized that Herndeg was actually running 73% crit rate. So he would actually not crit 2% of the time. So I was like, oh, hey, that could actually affect, the run consistency. So after I fixed Herndeg here, I did run him for another 100 runs, and the result is about as expected here. So you guys can clearly see we are looking at 91% win rate after I corrected the Herndeg there. So, a little bit of percentage here and there is going to make a little bit of a difference. But yeah, about expected results. I would say between 90 and 95% win rate. Not too shabby for this team. Herndeg, big thing for him is that he needs the accuracy because he's kind of the backup plan to Estrid missing her weaken. So he has to drop the weaken, and he has to have enough accuracy to drop turn meter as well, which is very helpful. Took Crushing Ren, gives him an extra 7% ignore defense here. And then same kind of masteries as Sun Wukong, going down to 20% crit damage there. Pretty standard stuff for Herndeg. We got Gerbtuk. He is in a Feral set because that's kind of the only set that gives him additional damage. His passive here will give you 22.5% damage from the 3 poisons that he applies with his A3. And then with the Feral set, he gets an extra 5% only. That's the only set that's going to give him any more damage boost. So he is in a 9-piece Feral set. Technically, he doesn't need to be booked, to be honest, because he just places the poison. That's the most important thing, and it's just buffed up. He doesn't need masteries either, and he doesn't need a relic. He doesn't hit or anything like that. Lastly, we have our Bad Owl. He's in 9-piece protection. He could be in a 9-piece feral, same kind of thing. He lands 2 poisons or 2 continuous heals. It's probably more beneficial for 9-piece protection because the protection buffs are guaranteed. Whereas the poisons can be, they can be resisted. So he doesn't always guarantee himself 2 poisons. But in this case, he always guarantees 2 continuous heals. So I would say protection would be the best for him. Again, he does not need to be booked. My Bad Owl is not booked. Big thing is that you have to land the poisons or have poisons on the enemies for this damage boost. And it's pretty significant. I put Bad Owl in the lead to take advantage of his 25% crit rate. He doesn't need masteries or anything like that or relics. So that is the 5 champion team that I'm running right now. Like I said earlier, it's running at about 90%, low 90s. I did test a couple other variations for this team, but Gerbtuk plus Bad Owl, they give the biggest damage boost, and I find they work pretty well. So for example, you could use somebody like Podrick. Podrick gives plus attack, which is very good passively with his passive. And then he also gives a turn meter fill with a increased speed. So you could put him in protection, you're going to gain 10% damage, you're going to turn meter boost and all that. There was some issues with Estrid basically being negative affinity, weak hitting the Mortu and all that. But Herndeg, after, slapping on some more accuracy, was able to land the weaken more consistently. And then that kind of alleviates the weak hit condition from the Yostria here. And also the turn meter drop here is also very good. So making sure that Herndeg has the accuracy to do all that makes a big difference. The other champion that could be maybe useful is a 9-piece protection Helmet. So Helmet here, he does give plus crit rate, plus crit damage, and increased speed. So that could be potentially 15% protection damage boost. But, it's not as much as Bad Owl. Bad Owl has 30% damage boost, right? 20% here, and then 20% from the Feral or protection set. So Helmet, he does bring extra crit damage. That probably is not going to be the difference maker. The other champion that may do something is actually Lydia. Lydia brings decreased defense and weaken with the 2 buffs as well. So you can put her in Feral or protection. The thing is, decreased defense is not that useful when you ignore 100% of defense like our Wukong. So that's the big thing with Lydia. She definitely is helpful if you're missing the decreased defense or ignore defense in your champions. I tried other champions like Arbiter as well. She just doesn't bring enough. She does bring the bigger turn meter boost, 30%. So she might be able to allow a team that's a little bit slower But she doesn't bring enough, right? Like you can't really give her like a protection set. She only gains like 5%, I guess. The other champion I tested out instead of Herndig was Jintaro. He actually does okay, but he doesn't cover some of the weaknesses that Herndig covers. Like, for example, the Termir Deplete on Mortu. Herndig covers that. So he kind of checks Mortu a bit. And then he also checks the weaken that Estrid can weak hit. Because if the weaken doesn't land from Estrid, and then if Herndig did not land weaken himself, Wukong would probably target Volcanos and then the run would end. But if weaken lands on the Mortu, then Wukong would go into the Mortu more often, right? Jintaro doesn't have that. Jintaro does have this A3, and he is magic affinity. He will always target the Mortu. However, this A3 doesn't seem to hit as hard as his A2. His A2 actually hits pretty hard, but his A3 doesn't. But his A3 does give you a weaken as well. Could be an option. Maybe my Jintaro just wasn't built super well. Yeah, I had to use this one because I didn't have a cat's gaze or anything. But this is not as it's a 15% ignore defense, so similar to cat's gaze. What else? I used a newt as well to kind of soften up the boss, and then used the Wukong's less splash damage to kill the boss. It kind of worked, kind of didn't, but still ran into some issues. Artor also was an option as well. He has the increased attack, increased turn meter. Again, possible option. You could put him in a protection set. You get 10% damage, whereas Arbiter only gives you 5%. But yeah, overall, the 5 that I've showcased here is the best that I was able to come up with. I don't know if I would build this out because it does take some gear off my main champions, but I might just build it out. I mean, the speed at which you can farm is incredible. But I don't like this, the 10% fail rate. It's just not the greatest. But anyways, guys, that's going to be the team here. Super fast team, a little bit more on the accessible side. No void Legos or mythical champions or crazy relics like that. Let me know in the comments below if you guys have seen this team. If you guys have any improvements, let me know. Thanks a lot for watching. Appreciate your time. Hopefully this was helpful, and I'll see you guys in the next video.